The Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Safina Insecticide, and Cruiser Max Vibrance Beans.
Bernard Tobin back on the Soybean School. Always fun to talk insects and bugs with Tracey Baute, O'Maffer's entomologist. Thanks for taking the time.
No problem.
You know, it's an interesting spring. Obviously really backward and late.
Yes.
But in recent weeks, we've gone from wet to dry. And that's an interesting scenario. You're starting to see something like thrips, which we saw last year a little bit in corn.
Yep, so thrips in soybeans and corn this year, and that's usually because the conditions turn dry. They're usually always there, but on the lower leaves of the plant. But in a year when it starts to turn dry, the crop gets stressed, and it's not growing as quickly, they can quickly take over the whole plant and actually cause some harm.
Yeah, so how do you identify thrips?
Yeah, so they're very tiny, bigger than mites at least. They're cigar shaped. They are feeding on the underside of the leaf, but on the upper surface you see in corn streaking. And in soybeans, a lot of times their injury goes along the veins of the leaf. So if you're seeing that, I mean, some diseases can look like that too, but take a look on the underside of the leaf and see if you see tiny little cigar-shaped insects crawling around. Those are the thrips.
Yeah. What about thresholds? What about impact?
Are
they that tough that we need to control them?
Now, this is a rare situation. 2 years in a row we've had this pest that there's not a lot of information on. But as I look into thresholds, the best that I can see is if 75% of the field has thrips on them, with about 8 thrips per plant, and you're seeing that, especially in the newer growth, the plants aren't growing out of that injury, you may need to spray. We've had plots put in last year, but they didn't leave check strips, so we can't tell you what yield impact there might be. Again, it's got to be a decision you make. Are you going to get decent yields to pay for the cost of spraying? But again, if the crop is looking really stressed, you likely need to give it some protection from that one stress and hope that it also rains to get past that thrip feeding.
So again, Tracey, as we get into that dry part of July, we go from wet to dry, spider mites usually appear.
Yep, and especially once the wheat starts coming off. So they're in wheat usually until the crop gets harvested, or also along the ditch banks. They love the grassy crop, the grassy plants, just to stay on until those get mowed, and then they move and progress into soybeans. And again, a hot, dry situation. So down in Ridgetown right now, we're not that dry, but I know there's parts of the province that didn't see rains the last couple weeks. I really recommend going out and scouting, and especially along the field's edge where they're going to move in first. And unfortunately, some regions like Niagara that are always having them, they know a windy days, they just continue to get carried further into the field. So be on the lookout. You're looking for that stippling that looks like the plants are being sandblasted almost, and eventually will just straight out defoliate. And monitor. Shake those leaves on a piece of paper. If you see little round things scurrying, it's likely spider mites. It takes only 4 mites per leaflet or one severely infested plant to really require a spray. And you can spray along that edge where they're coming in if you're not seeing them further into the field. But you know, I've seen windy days where it keeps the sprayer from going in, and then they can progress pretty quickly.
Right. Hey, so I guess one of your messages is get out and scout, because you never know what you're going to see this year. You don't know what to. You've already seen some Japanese beetle right here.
Yes, Japanese beetle is one of those that I want us to keep an eye out for. They're abundant this year, and most of the crops are behind. So they like soybeans, and they certainly like corn, especially when it's starting to get into the silk. They like to clip silks. It may be a problem this year. It's something that we need to monitor. Again, defoliation thresholds come into play for soybeans, but the most vulnerable stages of soybeans is during that bloom to early pod setting stages. So really pay attention. And in corn, if they're starting to clip the silks enough that it's impeding pollination, again, they may merit a control if you need to.
Well, going to be a busy summer. It's been a busy summer,
Yeah.
and it's going to keep you in the field, I know.
Yes.
Thanks for taking the time. Always appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.